Good evening all, and welcome to Business Depot's Budget Breakdown. With me today is Jackie Reeves, Business Depot's Head of Taxation, and Simone Murad, Director of Accounting and Financial Planning. And I'm Rebecca Mahalik, Director of Business Depot Sydney. Jackie, what are some of the measures you've seen this evening that will have an impact on Australia's cost of living coming out of the budget?
Okay, so one of the most important things I think coming out of the budget, given how topical the cost of fuel price is at the minute, is that they have announced a temporary reduction to the fuel excise. It'll be cut in half, meaning that consumers will be saving about 22.1 cents per litre for the next 6 months. The good thing is that is effective from midnight tonight. They are expecting that will flow through into consumers' pockets within the next 2 weeks. And they have appointed the consumer watchdog to monitor that to ensure that retailers are passing it on to the consumer.
And what else did we see for managing the cost of living in Australia?
So they have increased the low and middle income tax offset. So currently that's at $1,080 per person, and it's being increased to $1,500 for 30 June 2022. So people preparing their tax returns, individuals preparing their tax returns from 1 July 2022, will see that $1,500 offset. It is phased completely out when your income exceeds $126,000.
And added to this, to assist with some of the cost of living that families see, there's some spending on paid parental leave, with parents now able to claim up to 20 weeks between them, and that can be shared as they see fit. And it includes single parents who can claim the whole 20 weeks themselves. Simone, what other spending was allocated to help Australians with the cost of living?
Other spending that was allocated is for pensioners and other eligible concession card holders. So there'll be a $250 cash payment to help with the cost of living. And in addition to that, there are some budget measures for affordable housing. So what we're seeing is $2 million to the Finance and Investment Corp that will help with affordable loans. We're also seeing the home guarantee scheme doubling with eligible potential homeowners able to have a 5% deposit, and single parents able to have a 2% deposit for homes rather than having to have that whole 20% deposit.
Jackie, what did we see for businesses out of the budget tonight?
Okay, so for businesses tonight, we saw two main measures that they're calling as a skills and training boost and a technology investment boost. For those of us out there who will remember the investment allowance boost that gave you a 150% tax deduction, this is kind of similar. So for every dollar that businesses spend, they'll get a $120 tax deduction. And it will be for eligible expenditure. So I think the thing to note there is the devil's going to be in the detail as to what type of skills training boost and technology investment boost is going to be eligible. One of the key highlights out of that was it's going to be external courses. So in-house training or on-the-job training is not going to be included. And there was a couple of, things in relation to the technology boost, which was that it could be portable payment devices, cybersecurity systems, or cloud-based services subscriptions. There is a $100,000 limit for the technology investment boost. And just a reminder that it will only apply for businesses with $50 million or less in turnover. And it will apply for this year with expenditure from budget night till 30 June and then for the full 2023 year as well.
Okay, great. Simone, what coverage was given to superannuation and retirement tonight?
Well, there really wasn't a whole lot for superannuation. The government's decided not to make too many changes in this budget, but what we did see is that they've extended the minimum drawdown requirement, so that 50% reduction for pensions will continue until 30th of June 2023.
Okay, and Jackie, innovation's always a hot topic. Where's the government spending the money this year?
Okay, so innovation this year, we've seen an extension to the patent box incentive. So you'll remember from last budget, they brought around this kind of new idea around the patent box for the biotechnology and medical industries. What they've now done is they've extended that for the agricultural sector and for the low emissions and technology innovation sector. And so this is going to be for patents granted from budget night, so tonight. And basically what will happen is that any income generated from the registration of those patents, so it's going to be very specific to that patent generated income, will be taxed at 17% rather than 30% or 25%. A reminder that it only applies to corporate tax entities and with turnovers less than $50 million in turnover. And the other incentive that they have announced is some good news, just removing some red tape for employee share schemes. And they've also removed the cap on the number of shares and the number of value in shares that unlisted companies can issue, so long as employees are not paying more than $30,000 per year to acquire those shares. So just again, some more changes around employee share schemes to make it, viable for startups to remunerate employees along the way with employee share schemes.
Okay, and now moving straight on to jobs. Simone, where is the government spending money on increasing jobs in Australia?
Okay, so there are two areas that we're seeing from this budget. So what we're seeing is the extension of the 50% wage subsidy for apprentices and traineeships, and then where we're also seeing is the priority trades. So they've got priority trades listed where you'll get 10% wage subsidy capped at 15%. There's a 5K payment for the first 2 years of new apprentices, and then for people in their third year, it is 5% of the wage subsidy that we're seeing there.
There's also been some measures announced to tackle the gender pay gap, including reviewing the Workplace Gender Equality Act, funding to increase the number of women in trades, and an investment to increase employment opportunities for women in sport. Jackie, let's talk about tax compliance. What is everyone going to be in for now?
Okay, so they have announced a bit of streamlining of the pay-as-you-go instalment system. So that's where you pay tax progressively on the way through. And so basically you're going to be able to calculate instalments based on financial performance. Now, that's kind of just a bit of a tweak of the system that's already there, because you can vary your instalment rates if you do have an expectation that you're not going to pay as much tax as the previous year. So just basically a bit of a tweak on the pay-as-you-go instalment system. They're also going to be linking single-touch payroll reporting, where they're going to be using that data to supply to state governments for payroll tax compliance. You'll see that there was some announcements around the COVID grants. A number of the New South Wales and Victoria grants were made non-assessable, non-exempt. So it basically meant that you didn't pay tax on them in the FY21 year or FY20 year, depending on when you received them. But then as other states started to be impacted by lockdowns, Queensland and South Australia also paid some of those government grants. So it's now been announced that they will be non-assessable, non-exempt as well. So there's a list of them in the budget measures. As already announced, if you're using the rapid testing, if you're buying them as individuals, you're going to be able to get a tax deduction if you need them for employment, and where employers are supplying them for their employees as a requirement for work, then they won't be subject to fringe benefits tax. So the budget is basically just reiterating an announcement that had already come. And I think one of the bigger announcements that is probably going to be key for our client base and our clients out there is that they are putting more funding into the tax avoidance task force. So the ATO is going to be having a lot more spending to ensure that multinationals, large corporates and high net wealth individuals are not entering into tax avoidance schemes, and to ensure that they're paying their fair amount of tax. But it's also including some measures around making sure that advisors out there aren't promoting schemes to avoid tax.
We've already seen some of the impacts of those measures roll out. There's also been some other spending and items announced, including $1.3 billion to be spent on domestic violence prevention by the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children by 2032, And in addition, there is focus on spending on women's health, including subsidies for breast cancer drugs and other measures. Simone, what are some of the other big spending items that came out of the budget tonight?
Look, there's a whole host of spending around that's allocated to infrastructure across the country. We're also seeing some increased expenditure on mental health.
Thank you for joining us for our short, sharp budget breakdown with beverages. Stay tuned for more information that will be available on our blog tomorrow at businessdepot.com.au. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Jackie and Simone.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Pleasure.